Hello and welcome back to A Splash of Paint. Now let's jump straight in and rejoin popular pastel artist Vic Bearcroft as he prepares to add the finishing highlights to today's Try Your Hand At project.
Hi, welcome back. We're going to resume our painting of Pembroke, the sunset seascape. Earlier on you saw me doing the tonal sketch and putting some basic colours in, the blocking out. What we're going to do now is to add a few details, not too many because we want a nice loose approach to this painting. So I'm going to start off with the black again. I just want to first of all tidy up the edge of the distant hills and add a little bit of texture, but quite faintly. I don't want this to be overpowering because again it's in the distance. So if I just make the top of the hills fairly, not straight, but tidier, then that will strengthen the sky behind. At the same time, I can drag a little bit of texture down to show that it is a rock formation. But if I do it lightly with the pastel, barely touching the paper, that will keep most of the violet colour in there. It'll keep it soft, keep it subtle, and put it in the distance. So that's the first thing. Then I'll move over to the hills a little bit closer. Again, the first thing to do is just tidy up the edge, make it a tiny bit sharper this time because it's closer to us, so you can allow yourself a little bit more detail. Again, don't press on. The beauty of velour paper is that it accepts pastel very, very easily. And if you press on too hard, you'll get very thick marks, very thick lines. And you want to be nice and gentle with it, nice and soft. The whole point about a pastel landscape or a seascape on velour paper is to keep it soft. And as you work through, just push the pastel into paper a little bit. Don't forget to give it the squint test. Stand back, squint at it, just check the tonal values are working for you. And then we'll move down here. We've got a little bit of a village underneath this rocky area. I'm just going to basically sketch in a few of the little houses shapes. I'm not going to dwell too much on detail there again because they're quite far away. So I'll do a couple of little houses there, maybe a window and house facing the sun there, and then maybe one on the hillside. So pop those in. And then what I'll do is I'll move across to put a few little ripples, darker ripples into the sea. Of course, it's a gentle evening tide, but even so you'll get some shadows in the water as it moves down towards us. And this is all you're doing. When you're sketching water, you're creating shadows and highlights over your basic colour. So the shadows are here. Wherever the water is rippling up, it'll get a highlight. So that is basically the shape of our water rolling onto this little beach area. And then we have our tide pool. So first of all, what I'm going to do is give a little more definition to the edge of that sandbank. And that will just lift it off of the basic colour we put down. It'll give it strength, it'll give it a bit more depth. And finally, just sketching a few rough pebble shapes there. I don't want to do loads and loads of pebbles, of course, that would take us forever. So just a hint that it is a slightly textured surface here and there. And one or two ripples in the tide pool. Not too many, of course, because this is mostly still water. So if we just sketch a few hints of shadows in the water there, that will do nicely. So next what we'll do is we'll pop a few colours into our houses, I think. So we've got a couple of houses here that I think are on the yellow side. So we're sketching a little bit of yellow there, a bit here. And this is using the edge of the soft pastel, which is sharp enough to actually draw with. So a couple of yellow houses there. Then we move to our English red, this nice pink colour. And we'll have a pink house there, maybe a pink one there. Remember the distance as well, so you're not going to see a lot of detail. And some slightly darker roofs. So if the roofs are in shadow, I can use a little bit of the purple for that. Suggestions at this point, that's all it is. A roof there, a little bit of a roof there. And then what we'll do is we'll take our golden brown, which is the dark orange, and our green, and we'll just sketch some rocks, more positive rock area into our hills closer to us. And then we'll have a little bit of a greenery here and there as well, just coming down the hillside, a little bit on the top there. Again, sketch it in. Remember, it's a painting relying on atmosphere and colour rather than fine detail. We can sharpen up our grassy area a little bit, because if the sun is setting over there, then it's going to just lift the green towards this side. And maybe the final part on our detailed stage, maybe just to tidy up some of the shadow parts of the houses, a few little windows in, doors and things like that here and there. And maybe a couple of rocks down here as well, why not? A little bit of a golden rock there, golden brown. Maybe just catch a little bit more colour where the sun's shining on our beach. Okay, so have a squint, let's have a little look, and I think what we'll do before we move on to our final stage, we'll actually have a few more clouds in there. So I'm going to take the English red. I like the sky as it is, it's quite loose, but I think a few more individual clouds will help. So using the side of the English red, this lovely pink pastel, just sketch in a little bit more positively some more definite clouds, working from the bottom where the light's catching it, and just lifting up softly so we have these high clouds streaming through the sky. And don't forget just to give them a nice stroke, soften them off a little bit, and be inventive. So don't stress too much over fine detail, just play with the pastels and experiment with them a little bit and squint at it. That's very, very important. You can see a lot more when you stand back and squint than you can close up. And maybe a little bit brighter down towards the sunny area, let them fade out towards that side, of course. And you can see that the dark grey paper in between these pinks and purples is actually starting to look almost bluish, almost an evening blue colour. That dark grey paper works wonderfully well with sunsets. And maybe it's a touch brighter over our hills here, just to lift them off the background a little bit and sharpen up some of the reflections before we put the highlights in. I want them to be a little bit stronger. That's where the squinting helps always. Check the strength of your colour, check the strength of the tones, put a little bit more in. So now we're ready for the final highlights. Okay, so we have our dark tones, we have our basic colours blocked in, we have some detail as such, although not too much. So the final highlights are going to be the key. First of all, I'll come back to the water, I think. First of all, I'll go back to the village. So we have a little group of houses there, not too strongly defined at this stage. Now, if we have our sun setting over there, the light is going to filter through this way and just catch the sides of the houses. So again, I can use that yellow on the edge, the sharp edge, and lift out some highlights where the sun's catching the side of the houses there a little bit more definitely, just to bring it off. Not too much detail, remember, because this is quite distant. Just the sides of the houses, little highlights here and there. And maybe here we have these pink houses, so we can use our English red, lovely pastel pink, just to highlight that side of it, maybe that side too. This one here, let it go into shadow a little bit, maybe the roofs. And what I'm going to do then is use the pink actually to highlight some of these rocks. This is a great colour, English red, this pink. It's a great colour for suggesting different times of day. So early morning, sunset, where you're highlighting something that's maybe a little bit brown. You want it to be a nice warm colour, but not too strong. Try the English red, try the pink, it works wonderfully well on something like this, just for highlighting rocks. So because this one is a little bit closer to us, we can actually be quite careful in defining rocks. Most of the definition actually of any object will come with your highlights. So it means you can be very loose with the rest of the texture. And if your highlights are nice and strong, nice and carefully shaped, that will give you all the definition that you need. So a little bit of a careful positioning with our pink, the English red, will lighten up some of these rocks with the sun just catching them as it sets. You see, that will give you some nice contours on your hillside there. Don't forget to squint. Don't blame me if you go home with a permanent squint, you know, that's part of the job. But squinting is really a great way of checking tones. Okay, maybe just pop a little bit of this on the sandbank. Of course, that's likely to be wet anyway. If the sandbank is slightly damp, then we'll get a little bit of reflection of the light on there. So, we'll do our highlights for the sea next. So the sea is actually rolling in quite gentle. It's an evening tide. And it's a lovely part of the world to sit down and have a bag of fish and chips or something on after your workshop day, or after you've been walking with the dogs, and just observe the way the water rolls in. You've got to be careful now when we're doing highlights on the water, the ripples with the white hard pastel, to keep them straight. So one of the difficulties I always have actually as an artist is drawing straight lines. But as long as you have your masking tape guide to start with, then it shouldn't be too much of a problem. So here and there, what I want to do is just get a few little splashes going on around the rocks here. I don't want to press on too hard with the white, by the way, because if you press on very hard, you'll get it pure white, which is probably not right for the painting. So if you're soft, make sure you use a sharp edge to it, but if you're soft with your application, then all it will do is will lighten up the colour underneath. So I can use that gently over here to create a sort of misty bit of water against that distant headland. Again, it just separates that from our water's edge. And then work your way down. You're highlighting over the shadows, remember, or above the shadows. So you've got your shadows of the water here, then we're putting a highlight on the top. And all the colour is underneath, which is reflected on the main body of the water. If you're careful to highlight just on the top of the shadow, just above the shadow, then it'll be accurate. Now remember, of course, when the water is rolling in towards you, that it is still flat in that direction, okay? It doesn't curve upwards or curve downwards. So always keep your pastel horizontal and just filter it down or stagger it down as you work. A little bit breaking up onto our sandbank. And then we'll do a few little highlights on our sandbank too. Not too many ripples, of course, because the water is quite flat. So just a few little lines will break up that grey and the pink. And break it up onto the beach there. And for one final touch, I'll just take my black. I see there's a couple walking on the beach in the distance, so we can pop those in. And a couple enjoying the afternoon sunshine. Two tiny little black shapes in the distance there. And that's our sunset seascape finished. Sunset seascape finished. Okay, I hope you enjoyed it. Please have a go. Remember these beautiful pastel colours and the dark grey velour, and enjoy it, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks, Vic. Nice to see subtle highlights and bring some depth into the houses to make the water sparkle. It really helps to add impact to the final pastel painting. Okay, time for our final break now, but join us in part 4 when I'll be showing you how to take man's best friend on an artistic journey, and I'll be answering a few more of your questions from the Splash Your Paint post bag. Join us after the break.